And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us once again here at the Upside. Really appreciate all the help we've gotten over the past couple weeks anyway. A lot of you guys really messaging us, letting us know what content you guys want to see, and we are back at it. So let's kind of dig into it real quick. Let me get this pulled up for you guys. All right. So we had a couple of trades today anyway. We saw that the Atlanta Braves decided to add to their bullpen, doing what they've done pretty much so far this past winter and throughout the season so far, just kind of piecemealing it together at the back end of their bullpen. Today they bring in Pierce Johnson. You guys might remember him from his days with the San Diego Padres. Has not pitched nearly as well in Colorado. Shocking. He has a 6 ERA right now with the Rockies before going to the Atlanta Braves. The Texas Rangers also had designated Taylor Hearn for assignment. You might remember him as the key piece in the Keone Kela deal a few years prior with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Things never really worked out with the Texas Rangers. He was not going to get another opportunity with a big club, so the Rangers decided to go ahead and designate him for assignment to clear up some roster spots of availability ahead of the trade deadline. And they're going to get cash back in that type of a deal. But those were a couple of the trades we saw today. Welcome back, Sarah. Ready for the deadline? Same here. I'm kind of enjoying the deadline season, though. I'm not ready for it to be here yet. I just want to see the trades keep on coming. I don't want it to end quite yet. I'll put it that way. Willard, welcome back. Appreciate you for joining us once again. To answer your question, does Houston have a chance in hell at getting Roberts Jr. and Cease? Absolutely not. Never going to happen. Don't count on it. Don't wait for it. Don't wish for it. It's never going to happen. As for one or the other, I would think they'd have a better chance at getting one or the other. but I don't think you're going to have a snowball's chance to get either one of them. I just don't think you have the assets necessary to be able to make that kind of trade happen. You're going to have to give some pieces off of your major league club, and I don't think the Astros are in a position to do so right now. I mean, they've got really great production out of some of the pieces they brought up from the minor leagues over the past 2 or 3 years, and that's kind of what's fueling them right now. That's why their farm system is very depleted. Their best prospect right now in the minors is a 19-year-old outfield prospect in Baez. You're certainly going to have to give him up, and even if you tried to go after Cease and included Baez in that type of a deal, I don't think that's even close to what it's going to cost to be able to bring in just Dylan Cease, let alone Roberts as well. But appreciate you guys joining us already. Let's kind of run through some of the rumors we're seeing out there already. In case you guys are unfamiliar with the site, this is MLBTradeRumors.com. Lance Lynn had signed that extension last year is what they're pointing to here, and that he has a 10-team no-trade list anyway. So we'll see what the teams are. Surprisingly, it looks like a lot of contenders, so he's kind of narrowing it down to the teams that he might want to go to. Rangers are not on that list. Astros are not on that list. Rays are not on that list. So maybe if you're looking for a pitching upgrade for those of you who are Astros fans, maybe something like a Lance Lynn would be something you want to have come onto your club. What if Houston offered Chase and Drew Gilbert and Diaz and Pena and Hunter Brown? I wouldn't do that first if I was Houston. I think Hunter Brown has that high of a future for your club. I understand he's got, a 4 ERA right now, but he certainly looks like a future ace. You got Dylan Cease, who's got, a year after this one left on his deal. Roberts Jr. gives you another high-end outfielder, but you're going to have to pay both of those guys, and the Astros formula has been never to pay those top-end contracts. So you look at the players that you've already let go that were your own homegrown guys like George Springer, guys like Carlos Correa, the starting pitchers that you've let go, Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander. They're not going to pay at the top of the market, so maybe having a couple of years of their production might be nice, but I don't think you're going to give anybody off of the major league club like a Pena, like a Brown for pieces like that, even if they have a little bit of control left. My cards are sellers. Tyler O'Neill is scratched tonight. Maybe it's finally time they move one of their outfield pieces out there. Tyler O'Neill would make some sense for them to move. They have some starting pitchers, Flaherty, Michaelis, Montgomery, that they could move. A report that I saw earlier today is that the Reds were willing to include Jonathan India in trade packages for controllable starting pitching. Yesterday we talked a little bit about how the Reds were going to look for some starting pitching here at the deadline, and that starting pitching was going to be a little bit of a premium, especially when you consider the NL wildcard pitcher. Almost all of those teams right now are looking for at least one more starter. Reds are among that group anyway, and we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. This is kind of interesting for them because they just traded away Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, amongst other starting pitchers over the last couple of years. Well, now's their time to try to push towards contention. Now they're looking for those type of pieces back in their starting rotation. What about Houston trading for Tyler O'Neill? Might be a good bat for them. Not sure that solves the issues that they have. I think they still need to get some more depth in that starting rotation. I think they need some more depth in that bullpen as well. They've really had to rely a lot on their top-end horses in that bullpen so far this year, and at some point it's going to start to crack where, other teams in the division that are running or that are trying to make a race for the postseason, the Texas Rangers, they've really relied on one reliever, Will Smith, all year, and really haven't gotten anything out of the rest of the relievers. The trade that they made for Aroldis Chapman really gave them a boost in their bullpen. I still think the Rangers are going to add one, probably two more pieces to their bullpen. We'll talk about David Bednar here in just a moment. There's some rumors coming out about him today as well. But Houston, I believe, is going to look for starting pitching additions first and foremost, and then add to the bullpen after that. If they get a deadline piece for their lineup, I don't think it's going to be anybody of high-end caliber like a Xander Bogaerts, Juan Soto type. I think they're going to be looking in that Tyler O'Neill category. So maybe something like that could work in Houston's favor. But we'll see what ends up happening. I know Sarah, you're a huge fan of Logan Gilbert, so I know you're pushing that button down for him. So we'll see if that ultimately ends up happening. Houston taking on Texas right now, 6-4. A little bit of a slugfest right now. any chance they trade for him? Well, in order for them to get a premium prospect back, the Mets are going to have to basically eat the entirety of that contract. The thing is, the Astros really don't have a premium prospect to deal. Now, could they package 3 or 4 guys that have moderate value, that are on the outside of the top 100 looking in? Sure. Well, yeah. I'm with you there, Michael. Welcome back, by the way. I know it's been a while. But as for the David Bednar rumors today, we got a little bit more clarity as to what the Pittsburgh Pirates situation is going to be here at the deadline. They're obviously going to be sellers. They've declared themselves as such. And now we're looking at what pieces could they move. Carlos Santana, guys that are on 1-year deals, obviously are going to come to the forefront first and foremost. But as far as the most valuable piece that they could move here at the deadline, that is clearly going to be Bednar out of the bullpen. Whether he goes to be a closer somewhere else, or if he's a 8th inning, 7th inning guy somewhere else, remains to be seen. He's one of the high-end quality relief arms available here at the deadline. It's going to take a pretty penny to get him. I think there's a number of teams that are going to be interested. He's got plenty of control left after the season as well. I think he's got 2 more years after this year left on his deal. So, he joins Josh Hader in that elite closer, elite setup man type of category anyway here at the deadline. We'll see who ultimately gets those types of arms. But Bednar is certainly going to command a heftier price tag than Josh Hader will for the Padres. But as for the Cardinals rumors here, Carlson's been rumored to be available. The Yankees were said to have interest. I know that the Dodgers are looking for more platoon-type players that they could add to their outfield mix. They possibly could fit into that type of a category. But I agree, Seattle would be, getting the short end of the stick if they said Gilbert for Tyler O'Neill. I think that St. Louis would have to include something else in that type of a trade. But I don't think Seattle's going to try to buy here at the deadline. I think they've got too many irons in the fire already. They've already committed too much to this season. And those pieces that they were counting on, Robbie Ray, etc., to really build them up, Teoscar Hernandez, etc., things really have not worked out well for the Seattle Mariners. They were hoping to be in a position where the Texas Rangers are this year, and just hasn't worked out that way. If Houston gets Cease, or by a miracle Robert Jr. in a not in chance, but never know who would beat Houston then. So if they got him by some flukish miracle, I guess is your question, I think that would basically put them right back to where they were with George Springer, maybe even a little bit above it, because I think Robert Jr. is a little bit better of a player than George Springer was. As far as Dylan Cease, he's having a little bit of a down year. So if he's still the same Dylan Cease that he's been with the White Sox, I think that they're better than they were, sure. Do I think that they're the best team in all of baseball? No. Now, if they get the Cy Young version of Dylan Cease, then absolutely they would probably vault to the best team once again in the American League. But right now, that's going to be between Baltimore and Texas for the best in the AL. Houston's right there, though. But if they were to get those pieces, maybe something like that would work for them. As Bregman gets his 3rd hit of the game. Bottom of the 5th inning, Texas on top, 6-4 over Houston. Braves making a statement early on. I think this is more of just Anthopoulos kind of flexing his usual trade deadline muscle. Usually what he likes to do is kind of add to that 25th, 26th man on the roster type of position with that bullpen. We saw him do that a lot before the season. Remember the trade for Colby Allard, bringing him in, sending out Odorizzi. Remember they made the trade for Danny Santana. They brought in a guy from Anderson from Tampa Bay. That seems to be the MO for the Braves as far as kind of tinkering around the back end of that bullpen with that 25th, 26th, 27th man, if you will. Cease is close to untouchable, similar to the price for Mitch Keller or Logan Gilbert. I believe Cease is certainly untouchable, at least at this moment. I think they could be overwhelmed with an offer. Much like I think the Mariners could be overwhelmed with an offer for Gilbert. I think Pittsburgh's pretty much going to hold on to Keller, though. If you're offering a package like some of the crazy ideas we've seen out there for Shohei Ohtani for Dylan Cease, then you have something that you might be able to get a discussion started with the White Sox on Cease. You think the O's have the best chance to get Ohtani? They have the best prospects? Sure, but I don't think they're going to trade them. I think they're going to hold on to them. I think they're in a great position for their future. I think they should add around the periphery of this team those prospects that are aging out of their system that they don't really see a future for on this roster. I think that's the best case scenario for the Orioles right now. Maybe guys that aren't going to cost a whole lot. Think Lance Lynn rather than Dylan Cease. Think Carlos Santana versus Shohei Ohtani as far as an offensive piece. But they aren't going to go out there and get in the deep water of giving up that many prospects for a rental. I get that the Orioles have a bright future, etc. They aren't going to get rid of that future just for a guy for 2 months. I do think one of the teams that's in the best position this year at the trade deadline is the Texas Rangers. And that's just because they have roster talent already at the major league level that's proven to be successful. Josh Young, Ezekiel Duran. I don't think they'll move Young, but Ezekiel Duran, 300 hitter so far, doesn't have a future as far as position on the field right now for the Texas Rangers. And bringing in a guy like Shohei Ohtani to really push them over the top, maybe that's worth the cost of giving up 6 years of the future of Duran along with the futures of Owen White and other prospects. You can check out our video that we posted earlier today as to what the trade packages could look like from the New York Yankees, from the San Francisco Giants, the LA Dodgers, and the Texas Rangers for a Shohei Ohtani, but we shall see what ultimately happens. Reds trading India is kind of surprising to me. We'll see if they ultimately do it. I don't think that they're really going to give him away, but I think this is at least going to get some teams at least calling to see what they could possibly do to try to bring him in. I think India really doesn't have a spot. Same kind of thing with the Texas Rangers with Duran. I don't think he has a spot there long term just because of all the prospects that they have coming through the system that are middle infield, corner infield prospects, and I don't think India really has a spot there long term. I don't think all of Bednar, Snell, or Hader get traded. I agree. I think probably 2 of the 3 get moved. If I had to, put money on it right now, I'd probably say Hader and Snell. Just because those are the guys that are on rental type of contracts anyway. Bednar, I think, is going to be a little bit pricier, and I think the Pirates may want to hold on to him and think ultimately what happened with Brian Reynolds could be a blueprint for what happens with David Bednar as well. There will be plenty of interest. Yes, there will. I'm curious to see what portion of the India market is going to be coming from the Tim Anderson market. I think that's kind of similar there as far as to what they decide to do. We shall see. The Angels are listening to offers. Yeah, I mean, every team's going to listen. I mean, whether or not they actually take them seriously or consider them, sure, is another question. But I think the Angels are now realizing where they are as far as the standings go. Let me kind of show you where they actually sit right now. LA Angels right now sit 4 games out of the last wild card spot, and just the way things look right now, I would probably say that the Angels, even if they made the last wild card spot, which I still think is an outside chance of that happening with or without Shohei Ohtani, I still think they need to consider trading Shohei at least at this point. So we'll see what happens. Sacrifice fly in the Houston Astros game with the Rangers, now 6-5. Scherzer or Verlander more likely for a trade? I would say Verlander, just because he's got a better health track record, at least in my mind. Scherzer hasn't been able to finish the last 2 seasons. We saw how it finished with the Dodgers. We saw how last year he got blown up in the playoffs and how there may have been an issue as far as health in the bullpen before the game. I just don't think Scherzer has the enough left in the tank anyway at this point in his career. Now, since he's missed some time earlier in the year, maybe he has enough left to get him through a postseason run. But if I were trying to make a trade for one of the two, I would try to go after Verlander first, then Scherzer. Rockies should trade for India. I'll put it this way. I've had a very different feeling as far as what the Rockies should do rather than what most of the other teams out there believe they should do. So, for instance, the Rockies, they've always had a great offense. great, but not elite, not out of this world, not best in all of baseball type of offense. That's what I think the Rockies really need to do, because every single type of pitcher they try to bring in, it just doesn't work that well. Whether it's, the high altitude, the cold weather, whatever the case may be, they just can't pitch the same there at that type of altitude. So if I were building a team in Colorado, I would strictly try to get the best position players I could possibly get, and I would pay for it. And then I would take whatever I could get as far as pitchers. I would try to get somebody who could sink the ball more than anything else. I wouldn't try to get anybody who does movement east and west, but literally just try to keep that ball down in the zone and live with a 4.5 ERA, a 5 ERA if I have to, and I would try to outslug everybody. Would it work ultimately to win a World Series? I don't think so, but I think it'd be better than whatever the Rockies have been trying to do since their inception. So we'll see what ultimately happens. That, I think, is probably the best case scenario for the Rockies long term, and I haven't seen them really try to push the pedal down in that type of direction since they came into the league. Another sacrifice fly evens the game 6-6. Texas and Houston are now even as they go to the 6th inning now. A little bit of an offensive battle there. Welcome back, JG. Appreciate you for joining us once again. Fans, yeah. Reds don't necessarily have the biggest pocketbook, but they saved a little bit, obviously, by trading away guys like Castillo and Maley, etc. Now they have to go out there and try to pay for those types of things now. So I don't think they're going to go at the top of the market. They might be willing to give some of their prospects, some of the older prospects in their system, just like I think Baltimore should, in order to bring somebody in. Somebody like a Lance Lynn, a controlled starter, at least for this season, and then see if they can, get some more youth in their system going forward in their rotation. Appreciate you guys joining us. As I mentioned the last couple of days anyway, we're going to be going live for you guys every single day, 8:30 till probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Just kind of depends how the evening goes, what kind of trade rumors are out there, if there's any news that breaks, etc. We're going to try to post some videos for you guys every single day. And try to keep you guys updated on what's going on. Starting pitching is the Reds' top priority. It definitely is. I think the Padres are just going to go for bullpen at this deadline. They could go for some bullpen help, I agree, but I think the Padres, if I were in the Padres' shoes right now, I would not try to add at the deadline. I would look to try to offload some of my, rental type pieces and see if I can call somebody up and catch lightning in a bottle, because you already have the pieces on the roster right now that should perform better than what they have already. So even if you lost a Hader or a Snell, your team, if it performs the way it should still be a winning team. But they haven't proven it so far this year, and we'll see what happens after the season if they can't turn it around. Did Atlanta overpay for Pierce Johnson? Also, is this the price for relievers? Did Atlanta overpay for Pierce Johnson? Good question. I would say Atlanta overpaid, but I think they're banking more on the, what the future might hold for Pierce Johnson more than what he actually has done this year. You look back to what he was with the San Diego Padres. He was an up-and-coming pitcher, somebody that they thought they could build something around in San Diego. A little bit surprised they moved him last year anyway. But, as I mentioned a minute ago, my philosophy for the Rockies would be to slug, and just live with a 4.5, 5 ERA, maybe even higher if I have to, and just try to outslug everybody, not even care if I have, a top 100 pitcher on my roster. I literally would just try to go, all hitting. As for what that means for Pierce Johnson, I think that tells you just how hard it is to pitch there, and I think that's what Atlanta is hoping for, just getting him out of that altitude, back into a good bullpen on a winning team. I think they're counting on a significant rebound for him. But as of right now, I would say Atlanta did overpay based on his performance so far this season. One away in the 6th as Leody Taveras strikes out for the Rangers. Look at that, 10-6 anyway. Rockies look like they're going to win. Yeah, I believe it was. Still can't believe Josh Smith hit an upper deck home run for the Rangers today. Bellinger's going to cost the same as the Baez trade, but if you resign him, it's worth it. I think he's had a resurgent year. I don't think anybody saw that coming, really. I think if you're saying, hey, I thought Cody Bellinger would really turn it around, you're saying the past 3 years of well below league average production, you saw this turnaround coming, you're lying to me. But I'll say this. Cody Bellinger's impressed. Do I think it's sustainable? I do not. I still think he's a very high-risk type of a player. I think the Cubs bet big on it, and their bet so far is working out. But to say you're going to be able to re-sign him right now, I think would be asking a lot for any organization that trades for him. You know, who could he go to? Any team that needs a corner outfield bat, you know, something like that. You know, he has some experience in center, some experience at first. He can be a DH for you. A lot of teams out there could use that type of production as far as a bat right now. So do I think it's going to cost a whole heck of a lot? I don't think so. But I think they could get a pretty penny for it, maybe 1 or 2 good prospects out of it. Just like Baez was. Well, Baez had better production at that point. He hadn't had 3 years of 200 average baseball or 200 average hitter. Everyone's saying Bellinger to the Yankees. I could see that one. I'm just not sure that the Yankees would be willing to pony up for him when they're still in the Ohtani sweepstakes. They're holding out for him, you know, or whichever, you know, some of these other top-end options are out there. I don't think Bellinger, to me, qualifies as the top of the heap as far as a rental bat, but he's certainly, I don't know, top 10, I guess. Ugh. Horrible pitch there. Watching the Rangers and Astros, where we kind of discussed some of the rumors that we've seen so far today, a couple of trades as well. Kind of interesting to see this one is that looks like rumblings out of Cleveland is that they're looking for a starting pitcher. With all their extra starting pitching that they've had over the last couple of years, interesting to see them looking for a starting pitcher. Of course, they don't have Bieber right now due to injury. They've had issues, you know, staying healthy in that rotation with McKenzie. Complimentary bat. They seem to always be looking for that. As Simeon strikes out, we go to the bottom of the 6th there. Someone like Lane Thomas would be worth going after as well. I agree. Cardinals have a lot of different options to go for on their roster, so we'll see what ultimately happens with them. They have a lot of rental bats, some long-term options that they can go for. Welcome back, Ramon. Appreciate you. Long time no see, exactly. They thought they were going to get Soto. Well, we saw the package that it took to get Juan Soto, so I don't think there's a lot of teams out there that would have been willing to give up what the Padres did. And now the Padres have got to figure out a long-term solution, 1, to sign him, and 2, for success. Welcome back, Bryce. You like Ryan McMahon as a trade candidate for the Yanks? That, to me, sounds a whole lot like DJ LeMahieu going to the Yankees. So I've really liked McMahon for a long time. I really liked him when he was a prospect for them. And I don't think he's really lived up to what I had thought he would eventually turn into. But I think if he goes to New York, we'll see what, you know, how DJ LeMahieu really elevated his career going to the Yankees. At least that first year was in that MVP level discussion. I think McMahon could have a very similar trajectory if he goes to New York as well. Sean Casey, the new hitting coach there. I could see McMahon being a beast there for them. And the Yankees don't really have a long-term answer at third base, so if it works out, maybe he could float over there where he actually came up in the minor leagues. Could be something that works out pretty well. Stop me if you've heard this before. Braves interested in Adam Duvall. This would be the 3rd time they would trade for him if they actually did that. That would be unbelievable. He signed a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Red Sox this offseason. He's had a great year for them. And the Red Sox certainly are going to have to clear some roster space here in the coming weeks. We'll see how things go. St. Louis going to trade Goldie? I don't think they will. If I were them, I would certainly consider it. I think that Arenado is probably going to be the tougher one to trade. I think he's probably the most untouchable one out of the two. But I think Goldschmidt could be had if you give them the right offer. He's only got, 2 years left to control after this one, whereas Arenado's got 5. And I think I don't think he's going to be part of that next winning team for the St. Louis Cardinals, if that makes sense. So if they can do it, if they're able to move on from Goldschmidt and bring in some pieces that will be there for the next winning team, I think that would be a compelling argument to listen to if you're a Cardinal front office representative. Congratulations, your Rangers are crushing it. Good to see them winning a lot again. I would agree. I still think there are a couple of holes on this team. Still believe they still need one more bat. But I want one more reliever at least. I want a right-handed power reliever who doesn't walk everybody. The Rangers don't have anybody on their roster that they can count on for that right now. But we'll see what the deadline holds for the Rangers. Newt Barr and Arenado are too. Yeah. I'll agree on Arenado, but I think if you start getting some of these offers that, with Ohtani, his name being bandied about anyway here at the deadline, you're going to see some names that you might not expect to suddenly become available when teams hear about what they're willing to offer for Shohei Ohtani. They might say, hey, I have this untouchable piece. I'm kind of on the brink of being in contention for a wild card spot. Maybe this is my time to go ahead and sell this year if I can get that package from that team for my player rather than going after Shohei Ohtani. So while I agree Arenado is very likely to stay put, I would say on the edge of untouchable. But this year I think we're going to see some crazy names that we wouldn't otherwise see. And then one thing that I haven't mentioned yet that I have brought up in the couple other lives I've done so far this week is the Milwaukee Brewers. Their situation is very convoluted as to what they're going to do long term when it comes to Corbin Burns, when it comes to Woodruff, when it comes to Adames. They have the resurgence of Christian Yelich right now. Do they go ahead and try to turn him in and try to save the money and then turn around and give that money to all three of those guys and try to re-sign them before they hit free agency? They try to mend fences with Corbin Burns after ruffling his feathers during the arbitration process. The Brewers are going to be an interesting team. Is this the time they do what they did last year with Josh Hader, kind of a little bit of a buy and a sell with that type of a trade? We'll see what the Brewers end up doing, but I mentioned a minute ago about the trade packages for Shohei Ohtani. Some of the rumors getting out there about what the packages from other teams could be could be available from other teams. The Brewers might look at some of those packages and say, "Hey, I know we are in contention for our division and being in a postseason spot, but maybe now's the time to go ahead and save the money on Christian Yelich, send him out, bring in some pieces. Maybe now's the time to move on from Corbin Burns, since we already have a little bit of an acrimonious relationship because of the arbitration process. Maybe if we can get some of those high-level prospects in and still be able to maintain our position in the division, maybe that would be something the Brewers would be interested in doing, or any of these other teams out there that have some type of a piece out there that would command a similar package to what Shohei Ohtani is going to command as a rental." Teams had no idea Bader was available last year. Okay. You think Ohtani's going to stay on the West Coast? I would say that's probably more likely than not. But I think a lot of these teams are going to look at him and say, hey, I got this bag of money. You willing to take it? Fascinated in a proposed trade, Mets and Dodgers. Dodgers getting Verlander and Canna for Pipio, Vivas, Munoz. What can you see here? Dodgers did have some interest in Verlander before the season. They are not looking to add payroll, so if the Mets were willing to eat the cost of his contract, that actually is not a very bad idea as far as a trade package. They get the rental or the platoon piece and Canna out of it as well. Dodgers have they've been willing to swing big in the past for some big trades out there. You think back to what kind of kickstarted their push towards contention with the trade with the Red Sox taking on all that money. I think now they're kind of in a different situation where they don't want to take money, but if teams are willing to eat it like the Mets, they might be willing to give up some better prospects in that type of a deal. Because remember, they're trying to reset their clock as far as the tax is concerned, so that way they can give the biggest offer they possibly can to Shohei and make sure they get their guy. When do you think teams start trading? Friday? I would probably say the bigger trades are probably going to happen this week. So anytime in the next 3 to 4 days, I would expect some of the biggest trades to probably happen. As far as some of the rental pieces, back end of the bullpen, besides Hader, might happen closer to the deadline. So if you're hoping for some of these big trades to happen, Verlander, Scherzer, pieces like that, you're probably going to see them happen here this week. But when you get to the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes, they've already said that they're going to wait until the final 2 days before the deadline. So that means Sunday before the deadline is when you're going to finally see the smoke rise from the Angels as to whether or not they're going to buy or sell at the deadline, or if they're going to buy and sell at the deadline. So we'll see what ultimately happens there. Usually rapid fire the few days before the deadline. It's rapid fire usually like the Wednesday through Friday before the deadline. Then the market calms down, sees where everything settles, and then they prepare for deadline day. Then we see a whole lot of trades really quickly as the deadline approaches. Canna and Pham are names to watch. Absolutely agree there. But I think the Mets have other pieces like Ottavino, like Robertson, even Diaz, who's been out all year. If they want to clear the books and let Cohen go ahead and spend this offseason once again, maybe they don't feel as comfortable with the recovery of Diaz. They just want somebody else to eat the remaining $80 million on his contract, whatever the case may be, and allow the Mets to go out there and spend once again. Maybe the Mets would move him as well, but I don't think they'll move foundational pieces like Alonso or Lindor or anybody like that. But I think anything else that's not nailed down could be had here at the deadline for the Mets, and then they try to really kind of pivot quickly to be a contender once again next year. Go out there and get one of the top end starting pitchers in next year's free agent class. The free agent hitters are not that great this year. This free agent class anyway. Shohei Ohtani, obviously the best in all of baseball this year. He's the best one by far. But maybe the Mets go out there and say, hey, we can improve our starting pitching and our lineup by going out there and getting Shohei Ohtani. So let's clear the books as much as we can now, since we're not in contention, and we'll see where the chips lie at the end of the season. So I could see the Mets really trying to tear things down because of how badly the season has gone. At the same time, I could see them holding pat and just seeing if they can get into the wild card spot and see if they can catch lightning in a bottle. Grichuk, Crone, Diaz, Hand, Suter, Rockies have a lot of pieces to move. I agree, but I don't think any of them are pieces that are, cumbersome to move. I think a lot of those pieces are very easy, small level trades to be able to try to get done on deadline day. You don't want to try to wait until all of those moves to get done on deadline day. But I think they would be wise to also move on from Chris Bryant. I think the experiment for Chris Bryant really hasn't worked out there. The question will be, where does he ultimately get moved to if something were to happen with Chris Bryant? The question is for him, since he's been a member of the Colorado Rockies, is health, and that's probably the biggest strain as far as a trade is concerned for him. But I think the Rockies really need to figure out a direction for the franchise. They put, 4 guys in Tommy John surgery just today on their pitching staff, and things are not looking bright for Colorado. I agree, they are going to be active here at the deadline. I think they could move every single one of those. You remember the days of Jerry DiPoto making trades left, right, and center? I think the Rockies could do something very similar over the next week and change. Willing to listen on Mitch Keller as well. Interesting. So I'm wondering if Pittsburgh, you remember how I just talked about the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes, some of the offers that were being bandied about for Shohei Ohtani, a controllable starting pitcher, a controllable elite level reliever, and David Bednar? You'd have to think the trade package for those two alone would, by themselves right now, would be better than what the Shohei Ohtani trade package would probably have to be. As good as that package is, I think it's pretty safe to say that a package for a controllable young starting pitcher and 3 years right now, 3 pennant races with David Bednar would make a very interesting trade offer for contending teams. So the Pirates could get a very interesting offer if they were to actually be serious about moving him. But I agree with you, Michael. I don't think they'll move either one of them. I wouldn't say either one of them is more than 30% chance of getting moved. I think Bednar's probably the higher of the two, Keller the least likely. But I don't know. Maybe they could get one heck of a package if they did include them together, though. Who will be the most aggressive at the deadline? Good question. As far as a buyer, a team that I'm expecting to be very active at the deadline, I'm expecting the Rangers to be very active, the Astros to be active. We've already seen the Braves make a couple of moves. I think they're going to be active as well. I think the Reds are going to add a starting pitcher, but I don't think they're really going to go out there into the deep water to try to bring in, high-end pieces. I think they're going to try to bring in rentals, low-cost guys here. As far as sellers, I think the White Sox are going to be very active, the Rockies as well. Pirates could be, but they don't have a whole lot to sell. If you're a Pirates fan, you don't have a whole lot of pieces that could be moved here at the deadline. I think the Mariners will be active. Might do a little bit of buying and selling. Cardinals, I think, are in a position they haven't been in a very, very long time, where they are very clearly a seller here at the deadline. And so I expect them to be one of the most active National League teams as far as sellers here at the deadline. Oh. Just saw that replay of the Josh Young home run. Waving by to the ball. He's up with 2 on, nobody out here in the 7th, watching the Rangers and Astros. 6-6 in the top of the 7th. Yankees should be buyers, but maybe also sell pieces as well. Yeah, that's what we talked about a little bit last night, is that the Yankees are going to do a little bit of buying and selling. The consistent issue they've had is getting an outfielder who can kind of fit out there for them, give them consistent at-bats. This year they've needed that a little bit more than they did last year, just because the Aaron Judge being unavailable, a lot of their other outfielders being unavailable, Hicks being let go, all those types of things. But I think the Yankees are one of the teams that at least is waiting for the Shohei Ohtani news before they act in one direction or another. I think they still could add pieces like Dylan Carlson, or some smaller level pieces, sell off some of the smaller level pieces, IKF, etc. They could add a catcher before that, but I think they're really waiting for the Angels to make it known one way or the other if they're willing to move on from Shohei Ohtani or not. Maybe you could include a controllable piece in a Maranciano trade. That would make something interesting there for the Yankees. Marinaccio. Sorry, I'm terrible with that name. Looks like Shane Bieber is going to be out for a while. As the Rangers load the bases with nobody out. Checking in on some of these other headlines just to make sure we haven't missed anything else before we hang it up here in the next couple of minutes. But if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us. We'll be making some more videos for you guys this evening, so that way you guys can check them out tomorrow. I think the Astros would have to include Ryan Clifford in any deal involving, if you want to get Cease. Well, like I said, I don't think they're going to get Dylan Cease. I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream for them. I think they're going to end up with Marcus Stroman. He seems to be the perfect type of player that they like to target at the deadline. Somebody who's not going to cost a whole heck of a lot. Still going to give him a pretty penny, but it's not going to cost him, major league level pieces or high end prospects, which the Astros don't really have to burn right now anyway. Dang. We talked a little bit about the Pierce Johnson trade earlier. Almost 17% of the fly balls that he's had in Colorado have gone for home runs. That's far higher than any other season in his career, obviously, because it is Colorado. But still, that is a little bit surprising that it's that high. Almost 17% of all the fly balls that he's given up have gone for homers. Something to consider. Maybe the Braves saw something the rest of the market did not. I think that's pretty much all of the news that we've seen so far today. The biggest news, of course, the actual moves, is that the Braves added to their bullpen in a couple of moves, adding Johnson and Hearn. We saw that the Pirates made a little bit of news saying basically they're willing to listen on Bednar and Keller. Seeing a little bit more news out of the Reds. They're looking for controllable starting pitching, and they're also willing to give up Jonathan India to get the guy they really want. So, a little bit of news, bigger news starting to come out, and hopefully we see some more trades later on this evening and tomorrow. And we'll be live with you guys again tomorrow at 8:30. So appreciate you guys joining us here this evening. Make sure you hit that like on this video. It really does help us out. I want to thank you guys for joining us once again. We're going to be live for you guys all the way through the MLB trade deadline. Already took off of work for it for you guys. We'll be live for you guys probably early on in the morning, around 8 o'clock or so is what I probably will end up doing here. And probably go through 5, 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock Central Time, just kind of recap everything. But Rangers take the lead. I think it was a bases-loaded walk. I can't remember what just happened. But the Rangers still have the bases loaded now with the lead 7-6 as we're just about to sign off. Bednar will cost a lot as well, I agree. We did the baseball trade value yesterday during our live, kind of talked about what it would ultimately cost. 2 quality pieces and probably some filler at the back end of it if you're looking for Bednar as far as what it would cost. The question is, are the Pirates willing to accept that type of a trade, or would they rather just hang on to Bednar and try to build with him in the future? Remember what they did with Brian Reynolds, kind of dangled him out there. Were they willing to listen on him really, or were they just trying to see what they could get for him? But we'll see what ultimately happens here at the deadline. Thank you guys for joining us once again, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow evening. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great evening.